Hello, folks. Welcome to the Manly Show. I'm Jeff Sieh, and you're not. And we're very excited to have today on the show a good friend of mine. And if you've been on the Google Plus for a while, you'll know this character. His name is Dustin W. Stout, and he is an incredibly helpful fellow. If you haven't followed him, you need to start following him now. But I'm really excited to have him on the show. We're going to be talking about branding and small business tips for small business to kind of optimize their branding. And so we're really excited to have Dustin Stout on the show today. Dustin, thank you so much for being here.
It is my pleasure, Mr. Jeff Sieh, and may I say happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. One day older. Yeah. So. Well, let's kick it off right away, because I think there's a lot of confusion, especially small businesses who are just getting started, or they don't really have time sometimes other than getting maybe a logo and a business card. They're like, branding, that's for big companies like Coca-Cola. So what exactly is branding, if you could break it down for us?
Well, I've defined it in a number of ways, and usually the one that I always kind of hang to or root myself in is branding is how you tell your story. And I think it's partnered with marketing in the way I created a poster a while back that said branding is how you tell your story, marketing is compelling people to take part in it. So it's more than a graphic, it's more than visuals, it's more than just messaging. It's the entire identity of how you operate and where you operate from as an organization or as a brand or as a company, as a business. It's everything that entails how you're seen by the world or how you project how you're seen by the world around you. And it all is kind of the core of it is what is your message, who are you serving? And that is your brand. And from there you can kind of start making decisions about logos and messaging and taglines and mission statements, vision statements. But at the end of the day, branding is your story, who you are, who you're serving.
Gotcha. So you're not, when you say branding, you're not saying like, branding almost sounds like you're branding cattle, kind of a thing. You're not doing that. It's not branding like that, or just having a logo stamped on a letterhead. You're talking the all-encompassing thing like videos, your social media messaging you're sending out. So it's all-encompassing. It's not just a certain.
It's everything. Okay. Everything that somebody is able to perceive or consume on or about your brand. That's branding. It's all tied into what branding is. Now there's subdivisions of branding. There is a visual side to branding. There's a messaging side, but it is not one solid thing that can define branding as it's a logo, or it is it's your social media presence. It encompasses everything about your brand and your company.
Gotcha. Do you think because I think, at least for me, until I really started getting involved in business and stuff like that, branding for me was always, whenever you think of that word, you think of visuals, and that's kind of it. Do you think there's a shift in thinking now, especially with social media and some of the other things, of that branding is becoming a bigger kind of ocean to dive into?
Well, for people in the PR industry and for people in the branding world, it's always been that sort of full spectrum understanding of what branding is, or what a brand encompasses. But I think the trend now, because everything's becoming more visual, is an added perception or an emphasized visual perception of branding. So because visual content marketing is so huge, such a big trend right now, I feel like I could be wrong, but I feel like most people are leaning even more towards branding means visuals, or branding means your watermark, branding means your logo, and how your company looks. And so that's why I look for every opportunity to kind of say, no, I know I'm a graphic designer, I know I'm paid to do logos and visual stuff, but what I do is secondary compared to understanding who you are, who you're serving, and how you put that out there in the world.
But wouldn't you think that once you have your, for someone that's just seeing you for the first time, they notice your logo or your brand image, And if they keep seeing that consistently over time, then they want to take part in your story. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I always teach is that branding is about consistency, whether it's in visuals, in messaging, or in just how you interact with your fan base or your potential customers. Consistency is key to building a strong brand because people want to be able to latch on to something that they can grasp onto, something they can depend on, something that is not going to be here today, gone tomorrow. People need that dependability and they need that consistency. So the essential, the very most important thing about branding is that it's consistent.
So what are some best practices for brands? Let's say they're just starting to I deal with a lot of small businesses. They're either 5 to 10 people or they're a solopreneur or whatever. And sometimes they haven't even thought about branding other than their logo or whatever. What are some best practices or steps they can take to start being more consistent? I mean, what would you, if you were going into, let's say it's a dry cleaner, what would be the first kind of things that you would tell them? Hey, this is what you need to do to become more consistent in your branding.
Well, I always start with what do you do? Who do you serve? Make it as dead simple as you possibly can, because if you can't state simply what you do and who you serve, then how are other people supposed to remember it? If you can't say it in a way that is easily communicated, then people aren't going to easily remember it. So find out what it is exactly, what you do, who you serve, and once you figure that out, then from there you take the brand logo. If you don't have a logo, get one, because it is an important part of building that the trust and that professionalism that people expect from a solid business. So from there, get your messaging down, because you don't want to say we're the best dry cleaners in Arizona, and then have an employee tell someone, oh, we're the best dry cleaners in the world. You want to have the messaging, whatever your tagline is. Every company has some sort of tagline that they're kind of known for. Right now Samsung is a good example. Samsung is constantly using the next big thing has arrived, or something of that nature. The next big thing is here. So that's consistent. That message is consistent across all their messaging and all their branding, all their advertising. It's the same message. They use the same terminology. Be aware of the terminology you use, and just be consistent. You have to make some decisions, and that's the hardest thing for business owners, I find, is to make those decisions and eliminate options. So you narrow everything down as solidly and precisely as you can, who it is you serve, what it is you do, and then be super, super obsessed with being consistent about the messaging, the visual identity, and how you serve your customers.
Do you find that most small businesses are trying to do too much? They have too big of a, they want to serve everybody? Do you find that to be? Okay.
Absolutely. It's the most difficult thing, right? Because we want to, as business owners, we want to have the widest reach possible, right? We want to, we want to grow our business. We want it to be able to serve as many people as possible, and we make this mistake that we can't eliminate people. We have to be more generalized. We have to generalize our messaging and generalize our product and who we serve, when that's not the case in reality. What happens is when you make it personal, when you make it very, very specific, that's what stands out. That's what hooks people in. So a great example would be, Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A they could have made any number of sandwiches. They could have hamburgers on the menu. They could have vegan things on the menu. They have the ability to serve people with a much larger range of tastes and interests in food. But they said, no, we're going to do the best chicken sandwich in the world, and we're going to actively go after those people who love chicken sandwiches. Maybe that's not the best example, but you get the idea. They picked what they wanted to be amazing at, and they went after that group of people Gosh, I wish I could think of a better. Well, another example would be Steady Demand, the company that I work for, a marketing company. Now we have a number of skilled social media specialists. We have a number of skilled content writers. We have some of the best team in the world. We could be a full-fledged marketing agency covering every single social network, blogging, content writing, graphic creation. We could manage and do anything. But instead, we've decided to serve the Google Plus space exclusively. We are a Google Plus marketing company. So we help businesses and business owners and agencies be awesome on Google Plus. We don't manage their Twitter. We don't manage their Pinterest. We are rock stars when it comes to Google Plus, and that's served us very well because there are a few people serving that specific space, and we all know that going to a specialist is much better than going to a generalist, in a lot of things.
Yeah, it was interesting what you said about Chick-fil-A. It'd be interesting if they ever had vegan things.
Right.
What is it? Jim Gaffigan says whenever his vegan friends go, "Do you know what they do to those chickens?" And he goes, "I don't know, but it's delicious."
I love Jim Gaffigan, man. He's talk about specificity, right? So he's a comedian. He's picked one topic to be extremely funny about. Every single joke is about food.
Right.
Another great example of well-branded messaging.
Exactly. It started with Hot Pockets and went from there. So, that's right. Mark. Wrong one. Let me hear. There we go. Branding. This is what Lee Rickler says. Branding is way more than just visual. From what your staff, their appearance, what your staff say, and I think that's a good point. That it's not just visual, like Dustin said. It's kind of all encompassing.
Yeah. And on that point, real quick, Lee made me remember. I had a friend who was a manager at a Chick-fil-A, and speaking of messaging, one thing that they tell their staff to say is they never say "you're welcome." That's not part of their messaging. Whenever you say thank you to someone at Chick-fil-A, that they will respond with "my pleasure." So that's one instance of consistent messaging, right? They want people to know that it is their pleasure and their joy. So they specifically said in their company guidelines, this is the word you use to in response to a thank you or a compliment.
That's good. That's really good. Mike, did you have a comment or a question for?
Yeah, and Dustin, this is just fascinating. I love your take on this focused, not only focused messaging, but focus in your target audience. But let's face it, when it comes to visuals and graphics, you're like the Ronald Reagan of graphic design around here. You're just awesome. And if you want to explain the Ronald Reagan reference to the audience, that's up to you. But my question is, how much of that?
Before my time.
How much of that is strictly speaking, visuals here for a moment. How much of that is talent, and how much of that is kind of skill and education that you've learned? And so then the correlation to that is for the business owner who maybe doesn't have that graphic design skill, which is this guy. Where do we go? How much of it should we be doing ourselves? What should we be looking to professionals for? Give us some guidance along those lines.
Well, a lot of what I do is based on skill. I'll be honest. It's a very highly skilled profession, the world of design, and to really create things that are really stand out, kind of beautiful, it takes quite a bit of knowledge, understanding. You have to know the proper tools to use. You have to have access to those tools. You have to know some basic human principles about beauty, aesthetics. But I believe that anyone can create things that are that will work. At the end of the day, it's not about creating art. If you're not an artist, if you're just a business, then the visuals are a tool, right? They're not pretty for pretty's sake. They're pretty to accomplish a goal or to achieve an objective, whether it's informing about your next big event or your next big promotion, or whether it's just to get out some brand awareness and get some leads or get some website traffic. So it's there to accomplish a goal, and I think there's a few basic principles that I actually discussed yesterday on the G Plus Spotlight, that if you understand those few core principles, then anybody can really create sufficient graphics. But yeah, there's a bit of skill, and with anything in business, you do what you can, and you don't spend too much time doing things that are outside of your strengths or outside of your competence. And if you're able to, you have the resources, always outsource to somebody who's more skilled, either more experienced to accomplish that task and to meet those goals.
I think that's a good point, and I talked about this the other day. Is there's a point, I think, when you have your own business where it turns where you say, I'm going to invest in myself. Here's an example. I'm getting ready to launch a podcast, and I could probably produce my own intros and stuff, but I wanted to have professional level stuff done. I mean, I wanted the guy with the movie voice, and I mean, it's going to be awesome. And anyway, I'm really excited about it. But I saw the price of that. Exactly. I mean, he's incredible. He sounds like Optimus Prime. But the thing is that I saw the initial price and I was like, oh, that's too expensive. But then I thought, I would totally do that for a client. I would recommend this company and put it into the invoice and everything and say, this is how much it is. And so it was. I think people need to have a mind shift that I can't do everything. You're good. If you're a dry cleaner, you're good at dry cleaning and customer service and that kind of stuff. It's okay not to be a good designer. That's why it's okay to hire people to do that for you. And I think that's a mental shift that a lot of people, because when you first start, you're trying to do everything yourself, and I think that's why small businesses fail. To be honest, is because of that reason. So anyway, investing in yourself, I think, is huge for a mindset of solopreneurs and small business owners. So, Wade, did you have a question? I saw you kind of raise your hand, or maybe you're just scratching something.
I was just, when is branding, when does it become too much? Does it ever become too much? Have you ever had an instance where you seen somebody's brand, or they're always talking about it all the time? Does that become a negative thing to some people at some point? Yeah,
it's a delicate balance, because you want to be able to have that brand recognition on everything that you do. You want people to see something that you do, something you create, or whatever you put out there in the world. You want them to see you in it. You want them to hear your voice or see your touch or your style. But I think where a lot of businesses or individuals go wrong is that they overbrand it, whereas like their logo is the most prominent thing on the image, or it's their face is the biggest thing on everything that they put out there. There's a few websites out there with one in particular that comes to mind. I won't name it, but you look through every single blog post. It's a well-known blogger, but every single one has his face as the most prominent thing in the image.
I know who you're talking about.
And I think that's the point where branding kind of goes over the top, because your message no longer about your message. It's kind of about you, and kind of people get a little bit not frustrated. That's not the word I'm looking for. They get kind of blind to it. After a while, it just becomes like overbearing, and they tend to ignore it, and that's not very serving to what you're trying to accomplish. Always make the message the point. Don't make your brand the point. Like when I put out either an infographic or a quote graphic, something I like to do every now and then, I don't make my logo the most prominent thing on the page. I put it there just so people know, it's kind of like my signature. But I don't put this big D right at the top, because the message is elsewhere. The message is something else within there, whether it's a promo code or it's you're advertising your event, something like that. The message should be the most important thing. The branding should be there, but it should be, I wouldn't even say secondary. It should be thirdiary or fourthiary, if those are even words.
Right. Well, here's a question it's really specific, so I'd like to see if we could answer it, because I'm kind of interested in it too. Mark Barris says, how should I balance my profile and company brand page to help them better coexist? So are those two different things, Dustin, or with two different branding messages, or does it matter, or can it be both? How would you answer that?
There's a lot of ways to answer that question, and I'll be honest in saying I haven't figured out the perfect formula, because for the longest time I was my brand, and that's kind of how I operated. I was entirely my brand. My blog Dustin.tv is just an extension of my professional life, what I do, social media, creativity, design, and all that stuff. But I realized that I like to mix in a lot of personal stuff too. I'll post pictures of my kids, my two gorgeous sons, my beautiful wife, and I'll post about our adventures, and they're not necessarily tied into anything that I blog about. So you have to kind of figure out what that balance is, and even I struggle with it today, as far as what should I reserve to post from my page. And some of the stuff is obvious, like pictures of my kids. I wouldn't post that from my page because that doesn't make sense for what that audience is looking for. So you have to kind of decide, go through and figure out what are the topics, subjects, types of content that I would share from my page that make sense for the page, and what are the things that only make sense for my personal profile. And just kind of play with it, because I like to share lots of social media stuff from my personal account, but there's always a question like, would it be better served if I started with my page? And actually, the best advice I ever got was from Stephan Hovnanian, and he said to use your page as sort of a subject, a content curation. So based on subjects, your page is the source for all the specific topics that are relevant to that page, and then you just share from you reshare your page's posts in order to help amplify it through your personal account.
Oh, good. That's a good answer, because yeah, I think a lot of us still haven't figured out exactly the best way to do that. So one more comment real quick from Rob Russo says, good art is a talent, good design is a skill, and he says that totally applies to what Dustin was talking about earlier about, it is a very, I can be dangerous, that's about as good as graphic design as I can be, but, when you need a professional, you need to call somebody like Dustin. So, Mike, do you have any more questions real quick?
Yeah, there's one from Sarah Lamont that I wanted to bring up because it's kind of ties into what I was about to ask, and she asks, do you have a suggestion as to how many colors are recommended for a personal logo? I hear sometimes it's either 2 or 3, but I see some multicolored ones as well. And along those same lines, when you're thinking about colors for your logo or for your overall brand, how do things like fonts come into play in that decision-making process? And are there other things that need to be considered?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually wrote a blog post about that exact thing. I did this big post on color psychology, the psychology of what colors actually communicate to people, and then I did a follow-up post with here's how to choose your brand colors like a pro. Now, if you study a lot of the biggest brands out there, which I've got a blog post in the works that's exactly that, a study of the most valuable and popular brands in the world, most recognizable brands, you'll notice a trend. Things trend towards simplicity and as few colors as possible. Now, there's the exceptions. There's the Googles, who has 5 different colors. There's the Microsoft, who has, again, 5 different colors. But then you have Nike. One color usually is what their logo is represented as. You have Sony, usually one color. Samsung, usually one color. Apple, one of the biggest, most valuable brands in the world, one color, one symbol. So my advice, and the advice of a lot of people in the branding world, is to stick to 2 colors. 2 colors allows for enough simplicity to have one color that kind of pops. It's the pop color that really draws the attention and represents the brand as a whole, and then one color that kind of either complements that or helps it to stand out more. A good example, I guess I'm my own best example, is red. You'll see on Dustin.tv, everything that I do branding-wise, the D is either in red or in white or in black. So those are kind of my 3 colors. I have one highlight color, I've stuck to one, and then 2 neutral colors that kind of support the highlight color, so that the red always pops, and it's not overdone. It's kind of, it's just a highlight. So I'll actually throw that link to the full post that I wrote in the event page here. But try to 2 colors or 1, and then have some either neutral colors or toned down colors to support it.
Well, Lee Richter makes a point. I want to make sure, I think you put this in one of your blog posts, right? Use all the fonts you can find on your machine and bold up Comic Sans. You'll look very professional. No, I'm just teasing. Yeah, he would never do that.
Hashtag all the fonts.
All the fonts, yeah.
All the colors.
But seriously, Chef Dennis, thanks. Hey, Chef, thanks for stopping by the way. He says, I think it's important to add the human element to your brand page when you do use one. Too many times brands remain faceless without an identity, and that turns people off. And I think that is a very good point.
Yeah, true story. I thank you for bringing that up, Chef. One thing that I do personally is, because I can do this with my brand, Dustin.tv, because it is only me who's representing that brand. So I can use that personal pronoun of I, me, my, in everything that I do. And I can when I reply to people in comments, I can say, I love that, or I can make it sound personal. And depending on your business or your brand, you may or may not be able to do that same thing. But always try to sound like a human being, not a robot. People don't want to interact with robots. They want to know that there's a real person who actually cares about them behind the brand.
All right. Well, guys, let's go through the panel just real quick. If any more questions for Dustin, because I have a doozy at the end, so I'll go last. But Mike, do you have any more?
No, I think this has been fantastic, Dustin. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on here because, like I said, I'm one of those that this has been a challenge for me personally. I mean, look at my logo. I love my logo, but I mean, how many colors could I possibly fit in that thing? We need help.
Wade, what about you?
I don't have any more questions. Just, of course, I love talking branding with Dustin. I mean, I'm the same as Mike. Seems like I've just now kind of got my foot, stable, at least with something I'm trying to, be consistent across all boards. I do see one fault that I'm doing right now. Whenever I do a blog post and I'll share that blog post, my logo is too big. And one thing that Dustin said was, maybe I need to shorten that thing down a little bit, resize it, so I can make my message the most important thing. So sometimes I feel that I need to show people where this came from. You know what I mean? And maybe that's what a lot of people, maybe that goes through a lot of people's minds. And that's one thing I need to work on.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a balance. It's something that you have to really balance. One thing that I tell people is when you're creating a visual, you can only showcase one thing. You can only make one thing stand out, because if you try to make everything stand out, nothing stands out. And so that's the biggest thing is what is the most important thing you want people to see. Make that the standout. Make the other thing secondary. And there's power in subtlety. There's confidence and power in being subtle. Some of the greatest photographers in the world, when it comes to, say, HDR photography, the best photographers are extremely subtle in a lot of their color variations and their HDRs, and you see the ones that are like way over the top. You're like, oh, something about that it's just too much. So there's great power in subtlety, and in understanding what should be emphasized and what should be, just supporting the emphasis rather than trying to, double the emphasis.
One thing I would add is for all of you who are watching, to make sure you go over and sign up for Dustin's newsletter, because I've learned a ton. I mean, he really does give a lot of tips. There's even some special things he gives out just to his subscribers. So it really is worth going over to his site and subscribing. So it's pretty cool. Here's the last question that I want to pick your brain on. What can a small business with a limited budget really do to brand themselves? I mean, what is, because they sometimes all they can do is afford a logo. I mean, what can they do to help their money stretch the most in branding?
Well, I would, if you don't have a logo, I would start with, figuring out what your story is, who you are, who you serve, all that fun stuff. Figure all that out on your own. I almost said it's simple. It's extremely hard to figure out who it is you are and who it is you serve. But really figure that out. Really figure out what your identity is. Then find somebody. There's plenty of stock logo sites. As much as I hate to say it, there's stock logo sites out there. You can go to stocklogos.com, I think, is one, and you can find thousands, if not tens of thousands, of pre-made logos that you can buy for, $50 or $25 if you go to graphicriver.net. I think is one of the ones that I even use these sites if I'm looking for inspiration, and I'm stuck on a concept. So there are ways that you can get logos that will work for you, but don't go to Fiverr. Nobody on Fiverr is going to give you a good logo that I've seen. If you find someone on Fiverr that can do logos that are extraordinary for $5, let me know. I'll put them to work. But spend money on something that's high quality, and make sure you get the vector versions of it. That's kind of a techie designer word, but just trust me, vector. Make sure you get the assets.
That's so you can expand it and it won't pixelate, right?
Yeah, a vector.
Okay.
Yeah, a vector item is usually created in something like Adobe Illustrator, and you can make it as big or as small as you want, but it'll never get that pixelated look that looks real ugly. So get some vector logo assets, and there are tools out there that will allow you to, like Canva or Pixlr.com or any of these free graphic design tools that you can put to work for you and create a bunch of templates. I always recommend take a day, take a couple hours one day, and create some templates that you can kind of recycle over and over again. Logo here, message here, and you can kind of recycle those on a consistent basis, so that at least you get something that's consistent with your brand.
Awesome. That's great advice. I think sometimes, it's so good to go back to where to start at, because I think more people are coming onto Google Plus and watching these Hangouts, and you never know where they're at, and I think it's really good sometimes just to go back to the basics. So, well, we're going to wrap up our show today. I want to have the guys give a chance to do a shout-out and tell us what they're doing. Wade, what's up with you, and where can we find you the best?
WadeHarman.com/blog. You can read my post there. I have the Relationship Marketing Experience course that is online and helping plenty of people right now. So go grab a copy of that if you'd like. And I'm also fixing to put the Relationship Marketing on video podcasts too. So that's to be announced.
Well, you just announced it, so that's awesome.
To be announced. I'm doing this. To be announced.
So, Mike, what are you doing?
Well, I will soon announce that I have an epic piece of content coming out, and it'll probably be next week sometime. So you can find me at thesocialmediahead.com, plus Mike Allton on Google+. Happy to hang with you. Thanks, guys. Good show.
How about you, Dustin? I know we can find you at Dustin.tv, but what else you're working on, or want us to come subscribe or do something like that?
Yes, working on something really big, probably the biggest thing I've ever done. And starting tomorrow on my YouTube channel, I will be releasing sort of a teaser video series of the bigger thing to come. And it's going to be a weekly show talking about social media creativity. And so look forward to the first video tomorrow on youtube.com/DustinTV.
Awesome. Make sure you drop that into everybody drop everything that you have done and put in the links. And there's some questions that I think we probably ought to go back and answer in the comments, and so we'll do that. And my announcement is I'm getting ready to start a podcast on Pinterest. So that's coming shortly. Like I mentioned, it's getting produced, so I'm really excited for that. Let me know if you want to be pinged when that comes out, because I'm really excited about it. But that's our show for today. Thank you for watching The Manly Show, where the panel is wise, the guests are good-looking, and hopefully your host is above average. We'll see you next time, everybody. Thank you.